Oh, got it. I forget we get that now. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting of January the 24th. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nations. We'd like to have approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Approval of adoption of the minutes, please.
Move adoption.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Receipt of committee minutes.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. We have no delegations, no unfinished business. Correspondence. That council received the manufactured home park permit, development permit, and development variance permit, 3025 Royston Road report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the development of 3025 Royston Road is proposed to be a 56-unit manufactured home park with an internal road network and green space. Each lot will accommodate a single-family residential dwelling in the form of a manufactured home. Each home is required to meet CSA standards, and any alterations to the dwellings require an engineer to sign off. The park is proposed to be private property and will be managed by a park manager with an on-site office. Because of the development's proximity to Maple Lake Creek and the other unnamed streams, the applicant was required to design the manufactured home park to comply with the village's floodplain management bylaw. The bylaw requires construction to be set back 15 meters from the natural boundary, or otherwise known as the high water mark, of any creek or stream, and 1.5 meters above the natural boundary. And the natural boundary is defined by the Lands Act. The potential flood hazard from Maple Lake Creek has been considered in the context of future climate change. The Stormwater Management Plan considers climate change and its calculation and design of the detention ponds and required flood construction levels for the dwellings also count for increases in floodwaters. The development will be required to connect to municipal sanitary, storm, and water, which already run down Royston Road. The details of the connections will be formalized during the design stage approval with the operations department. The applicant will be required to pay development cost charges for this project. Manufactured home parks are considered residential medium density, which requires a payment of $15,661 per dwelling unit. And these DCCs would be payable at the building stage the building permit stage. As required by the development permit area number 1 and the provincial riparian areas protection regulation, a riparian areas regulation assessment was conducted, and a stream protection and enhancement area, or SPEA, has been determined for each of the water courses surrounding the property. The SPEAs are also measured from the high water mark of each water course. Within the Maple Lake Creek SPEA, the report recommends that wetlands be constructed to enhance stormwater management and that vegetation be restored by planting shrubs and trees endemic to the area. Details of the planting can be seen on the landscape plan. The proposed development meets all requirements of a manufactured home park bylaw, with the exception of the primary access not having a width of a minimum of 8 meters and a second access from a public street. Both of these are being addressed by the concurrent development variance permit application. So for the second access, the applicant is proposing to provide an 8-meter wide emergency access road onto the Trent River main. The applicant has been working with the property owner to enter into a legal access agreement to allow for the construction of a culvert on the private property and make the access point viable. The emergency access road would be gate controlled and only accessible by emergency services. Should the Trent River main become a public road in the future, the emergency access could become a regular access to the site. The applicant is requesting to also vary the primary access road width from 8 meters to 6.5 meters. The reduced access road width contributes to better protection and enhancement of the Maple Lake Creek riparian area, while still allowing for a 3-meter vegetated buffer between the access road and the neighboring residential property at 3019 Royston Road. The reduced road still meets MMCD guidelines for travel lane width. As per the MMCD design guidelines, minimum width for a single lane is 3 meters for rural or urban single family roads. The manufactured home park bylaw specifies that interior streets must have a minimum paved width of 6 meters. And the proposed development has 6.5 meter interior streets, which would connect to the matching 6.5 meter access road. And that is it from me. Do you have any questions?
Questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so I've got a few concerns about it. I realize it's just for referral tonight, but I like that. I think so. It's not a great plot of land. Let's just put it that way. It's been used for dumping in the past and is right beside our sewage outflow. So to see some improvements made to it with wetlands and natural native species, I think would be great. There's a very, very small park dedication in there. And because they are very far from town, at the end of Royston Road before exiting Cumberland, it would be nice if there was more amenity within the development itself. Past proposals that we've seen for this same area have had a better central amenity for the people, with like a barbecue area, benches and seating, picnic tables and stuff, so that the people living there would have some more outdoor space, which I think would be really nice. Yeah, I guess there is some concern about safety with the width of the road, and of course we'll have to see if they are allowed the access on the Trent Main there. The other thing about the past proposals, the surrounding land, which Cayette was proposing to develop at one point, had connectivity and trails, and that was something that we were requesting of them. And I was wondering if this development has considered that at all, and will that connectivity be interrupted with the greater plan that was the Cayette plan? I don't know what exists of that now, but the connectivity is the important part of that, and we want to make sure that that this piece isn't cutting through a trail that would have connected all the way through Royston. Can you speak to that at all?
You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry, Councillor Cutler, you asked a few questions. So for the amenity area, the manufactured home park requires a 5% dedication of green space, which the applicant has met. We don't have a lot of detail in the bylaw as to how that should be laid out, but they have met the requirement for the percentage of green space. Would you rephrase the second question? I have the connectivity question, but was there another one there? Sorry.
I guess just the secondary access there. So the development would be contingent upon them getting that access.
I guess the variance request would change. They would then ask to vary for just one access, I believe, but we'd have to speak to the applicant about how they would want to move forward if they don't have that access agreement. And then for the connectivity, I did look at the Parks and Greenways master plan, which does not identify a trail through the subject property, but there is one adjacent along the Trent River main. So, I mean, outside of the private property, there would still be connectivity along the Trent River main, and there would be pedestrian access for the residents in and out through there. Not vehicular traffic potential, like if the emergency access gate is there, but for connectivity for people in that area, they could definitely still access the Eastern Block or the Trent River main from that side of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, just about the road width. Councillor Kettler did mention safety and such. And the road width reduction is to allow for more riparian area, which is hard to argue with. Just pointing that out, and just, yeah, that it's on the floodplain of the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, yeah, just, I guess they're within the requirements, but it's definitely concerning, especially with us relooking at what the requirements of the wastewater facility are going to look like now with some of the weather events we've had. So just mentioning my concerns there.
Okay. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was late. I couldn't find the right Zoom links. So I have, yeah, similar concerns. In one sense, it shows us how little we knew about how important wetlands are to hydrological function in the community, and innumerable other assets that they provide for us. And hopefully we've closed that loop so that no one can fill in a wetland should they own one right now, because that's not a practice we would ever want to see again. Having said that, since that damage has been done to the wetland and remediation is unlikely, we may as well try and get some affordable or more affordable housing in the area. So yeah, I'm concerned, similar concerns. It's a very dense layout with virtually zero green space on the lots, and room, what looks like only room for one vehicle even. And so I guess we've already determined that they've given the 5%. Part of my concern is that the wetlands that surround this development are not necessarily wet all the time, and could be further damaged by people accessing them from this development and going further into the wetlands. So mitigating that with I appreciate that there's a fence there, but it's easy to put a gate and a fence and carry on outside of that. So I don't know whether there's something we can do about that. If that's just an education piece. I think I saw in one of the reports that there would be signage to try and stop people from doing that and dumping yard waste and that sort of thing. I also see no trees at all within the development. So there's lots of trees, and I super appreciate the native plantings, and the landscape plan is really great, except for the fact that there are literally no trees inside the developable area, which is however many hectares it is. It's large. So I would like to see more trees interspaced, providing some shade, and also water absorption and all the other great benefits that we all know trees provide within the actual development. And I'm really interested to see what the APC has to say about this. Yeah, and I guess my other question is about the retention ponds and whether or not those, if in the future they are not we find that they are not adequate. I think they're built to I can't remember. There was a 25-year storm event in one of the documents, and then there was a 100-year storm event, and I can't remember which one is designed for which, but I would hope that the wetlands would be at least designed for a 100-year event, because that's what we're having on a regular basis now, like we saw this year. So just, and I just can't, I can't tell from the design whether or not there's enough room for expansion there. And also just wanting to, it wasn't clear in the design of the retention ponds whether they are completely permeable or whether there's some kind of membrane that is outside of the drainage. I know there's a landscape cloth or whatever trying to keep silt in the overflow area. I just want to make sure they're not lined with plastic or something like that they're actually functionally integrated into the existing wetland is what I would hope we are doing there. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Do we know whether there's plastic in them?
Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look into more detail in the plan. And I know operations is able to review the detention pond design. But it is, yeah. Okay. I think.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Sorry, and then there's also the question that maybe you covered this in your report. Again, apologies for being late. It's zoned in bylaw 1027, but it's not in the OCPs. So don't they need to apply for an OCP amendment, or how does that work? Because it's not on any of the OCP maps. It's mapped as Greenway on all the OCP maps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Courtney?
Yeah, thanks. Elena, would you like me to answer that?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm just going to zoom. So it's always tricky on the computer. I'm just going to move to that part of the report. I thought this question might come up. So we were very specific about how we wrote that part in the staff report. So I'm just scrolling here now to help me out. So in the OCP, it is designated as Greenway, like you said, and this designation applies to corridors and areas of land that provide trails, wetlands, biodiversity, and wildlife connectivity. That's what it says. So the OCP is written in such a way that that's like an overlay zone, and it doesn't, it isn't required to be amended for this to go ahead because that zoning is already in place. The zoning for manufactured home park.
Right. So I guess my question is why isn't that indicated in the OCP? Is that just because it happened after we did the OCP and we haven't updated it to reflect that in the OCP? Or like, why would that zoning not be included in the OCP?
I believe it's been zoned manufactured home park since the 80s. So I'm not sure why that wasn't reflected when the OCP was redone. If I look back at the old zoning bylaw, and it was manufactured home park in the previous bylaw as well. So I'm not sure why the OCP didn't reflect that at that time. Okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. We weren't here at that time.
No,
so.
Nobody was.
Yeah.
And I don't remember all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to remember all the detail. But you're right. I've always remembered it as zoned for trailer park for years. Councillor Sullivan?
Without the variance granted to the road width, does that affect the density and the design at all, or does that just push out the riparian area that much more?
Potentially, yes. So they're permitted. Sorry, I just can't remember the number off the top of my head. It's
56.
Sorry, 25 units. Once they get over 25 units, they're required to have the 2 access roads. So there is potential for phased development with the second access road, being available in the future potentially. But yeah, they are permitted up to 25 units with the 1 access.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no one else? Okay, well, thank you very much, Council, for your discussion and your concerns. I too relate to most of your concerns, and some I hadn't thought of, but mine was about the people accessing the other trails and the other trail networks. And I think that they could use the emergency exit. I think that would benefit everyone in some respect, but we'll wait and see what the APC comes back with and other residents and what their concerns are, because I'm sure we'll hear from some. So someone like to make the motion?
I'll move the council refer the application for a manufactured home park permit, development permit, and development variance permit at 3025 Royston Road to the Advisory Planning Commission.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, we have that council received the AVICC resolutions report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Page.
Good evening, Council. Staff is bringing two proposed resolutions to you for your consideration to be submitted to the AVICC. Back in October, Council had a number of suggestions of resolutions to bring forward, and we've been able to bring two forward at this time. The first being related to the suggestion about the use of pesticides in private managed forest lands. And for this resolution, we did engage a consultant with a bit of expertise in provincial regulation and best practices for in the private forest managed land area. And he did point out that this is regulated by the Pest Management Act, and did suggest that the village request some enhancements of the tools regarding the use of pesticides. And the resolution before you is towards that vein, making that request to the province. Happy to have some feedback from council on that, if that's the direction you'd like to go. If you'd like to comment on that one first before we move on.
Yes, please. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Brown.
Oh, I'm just trying to find it.
86.
There we are. Pesticides. Yes. Yeah. Looks good.
Okay,
Oh
Councillor
no,
Brown.
actually, I had a suggestion around it. Now that I'm thinking, my head is on the right track. So we're asking for referrals and reporting to local government. You know, could we ask for approval by local government since they're pesticiding our watershed? No.
It seems like maybe a little much.
Maybe the first step would be a referral, and maybe that's something that we could.
As strong as we can go. Okay.
At this time.
There are regulations in place already, so it would just be a tweak to that.
Yeah.
Pesticides management plan that's required.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Sutherland, you had a question there?
No, I'm just saying I agree. I mean, this is another way to try to get Flynn Road to listen to us about stuff. So this is a nice different tack. I don't know. Yeah, I'm very supportive. I think this is a great resolution. And if we could get any traction with anything with those guys, that would be great.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I appreciate that you went and asked some experts about it and got some guidance on what act to hit or target. And yeah, I think it's good. You know, we continue to put resolutions in every year about what's going on in the private managed forests, and I think we need to continue to do that. So I'm happy that this is here, and thanks for your work on that, Rachel.
Okay, Rachel, you can move on. I totally agree.
Another suggestion that councillors made was regarding funding for hydrology research, and staff is just currently meeting with some organizations to discuss this. It's a little early in the process, and we don't have the full information available. So I would suggest that we give it a bit more time and wait for our manager of Parks and Recreation to have an opportunity to look at this and perhaps bring something back to council, perhaps a letter to the appropriate ministry and explore some other options rather than a resolution to AVICC at this time, if that's acceptable to
When we had the meeting with them, they were very open to hearing what we were requesting. So I think we need to give them time to move forward. I agree with you. Yes. Next.
There was a suggestion about decriminalization of controlled substances within municipal boundaries, and this was related to an application from the city of Vancouver that took place early in 2021. So we've just basically used that information that's available as a resource and drafted a resolution for council to submit referring to their application.
Okay. What is your pleasure then on the two?
Yes, they both look great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
So we need a motion. It's there before you.
We have a motion to receive. So
Oh, you got it, Councilor Brown? I'll move the council direct staff to submit the following resolutions to AVICC: pesticide use within community drinking water supply areas and local government exemption from federal drug laws.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Opposed?
Oh, that was
No,
late. That was
you were late. Carried.
Still wondering if that was me reading or the writing.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Rachel. That council receive the support for private members bill C216.
no receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Councillor Kettler, you'd like to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks. So I've written a briefing for council about this bill put forward by MP Gord-Johns. As most people know, we have two public health emergencies occurring right now, the COVID, of course, and then there's the toxic illicit drug crisis. And since BC declared it a public health emergency in 2016, it's only gotten worse. And 2021 has the highest numbers of deaths yet. This past year in Comox Valley, we saw a significant increase in calls from emergency services. It was up 127% from last year, and a total of 467 overdose calls in the valley. So for the year. So it's a significant strain on the system. Our fire chief just put forward his monthly report there, and it talked about the increases in calls within Cumberland as well. So we need to act, and MP Gord-Johns has put forward a private members bill, C216. And in it, he calls for decriminalization of illicit drugs for personal use and personal possession, expungement of the associated charges for personal possession, and most importantly, a national strategy that would provide safe supply and access to recovery treatment and harm reduction services. If passed, it would be the most progressive piece of legislation in Canadian history. So it's great. These same measures are supported by Police Chiefs Association of Canada, the BC Coroner's Office, medical professionals, mental health professionals across the country. There's a recognition that we need to shift from treating substance use as a criminal issue to a public health issue, because that's what it is. We've lost the war on drugs, and we need to stop punishing people and start actually helping people. So my request is that council write a letter to the Minister of Health and Addictions and to the Prime Minister supporting the private members bill C216, and that we encourage other local governments to contact their MPs and ask them to support the bill as well.
Thank you. Is there any questions from Councillor Kettler? Councillor Brown?
No questions, but thank you so much for bringing this forward. And thanks so much to Gord Johns for getting this through. As you know, we've been working with the substance use strategy to address substance use to create a plan for substance use strategy for the Valley. And a big part of that conversation is shifting the view of people around drugs and reducing the stigma, changing, making that cultural shift between criminalization to recognizing that this is a social and health issue, not a criminal issue. And hopefully this will go forward and we'll start moving in that direction. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, did you want to say anything?
Just that nothing that Canada's doing has worked so far, and we got to just switch the script. And yeah, the progressive nature of this bill is exactly what we need as a country, as a province, as a community. I mean, COVID has been terrible, but I think the toxic drug supply has been killing people for a lot longer and more intensely. And the different demographics too that we really need to take care of in our society. So yeah, I'm really happy to see this go forward and support this in every way we can.
And I would like to commend Gord Johns for putting this bill forward. I think he's doing an amazing job for all of the residents about this issue. I think it's an issue that affects everyone in BC, and not only in BC, but in Canada. It affects many, many people. And I remember the couple that came to talk to us about the passing of their son. And that's a very, very emotional thing to have to go through, and it's preventable. And I think it's time that the country and the people that are in power wake up to that realization. So, but we will continue to press. So thank you very much, Councillor Kettler, for bringing this forward on and working with Gord Johns on this topic. So Council, the motion is there.
I'll move that council direct staff to write a letter to Minister of Health and Addictions Carolyn Bennett and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau supporting private members bill C216 and encourage other local governments to do the same.
Seconded.
All in favor? Carried. Next, bylaws. That council receive the municipal ticketing bylaw amendment for animal control bylaw report.
See.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Rachel, you're back on.
Yep, I'm back. So a while ago, if you recall, council did make some amendments to its animal control bylaw, mainly in relation to streamline sort of the process around designating aggressive and biting dogs. And as part of that, the enforcement piece of that regulation is an amendment to the ticketing bylaw, and that allows bylaw enforcement to actually issue MTI tickets. They're called short form tickets. And give you just a brief highlight. Basically, the ticket amounts are very similar to the previous animal control bylaw that was established in 2011. We haven't proposed a lot of increases, just in the area of dogs off leash, barking dogs, and there was one more that we are increasing it from $50 to $100. Oh, dogs at large, from $50 to $100. And you will see that there's an early pay option if the person that receives the ticket comes in, I believe it's in within 2 weeks, is able to pay half the ticket amount. The other area that we're looking at some increases to the ticket fine is in the area of aggressive and biting dogs. And we're proposing that those tickets be $1,000 for the fine, and that reflects the seriousness around of the offenses related to aggressive and biting dogs. The owner, these would come after the owner, the dog has already been designated. There's been an incident that has caused the dog to be designated. So the owner of the dog will have had an opportunity to sort of make some remediation around the dog and do some prevention to prevent any further aggression or biting of other animals. So we're proposing those fines be at $1,000, again with the early pay fine of 50% of that. So if the owner was willing to pay the fine within 2 weeks, the fine would be reduced to $500. So right now staff is looking for the first 3 readings of the bylaw.
Okay, any questions? I actually saw where I thought it was an automatic $50 fine. It's not. For a dog doing its business on the street, it's actually $100. And so if they don't pay it within the allotted time, then it's $100. But it's nice to tell people that it is actually a $100 fine. That might help us because we're certainly getting a lot of complaints about it.
Yeah, I think the snow didn't help for some reason.
So, yeah,
No,
I don't know. Yeah.
makes it all the more visible, I think.
yes, it does. Yes. And I'll leave my other comment. Okay, so what is your?
Now we know that there's $100 fine if you don't pick up your dog after your dog in the village of Cumberland, PSA.
I think we should post some notices around.
Yeah.
I think that might help people because there's nothing worse than hitting the pocketbook for people. Okay, so what is your pleasure?
Move the council give first, second, and third reading to municipal ticket information amendment bylaw number 1162, 2022.
Seconder. Councillor Brown, you're seconding that? Yes. Okay, all in favor? Carried.
When do we
Next.
talk about cats?
Actually, I was asked that the other day. People are, yes.
That's a different report. Sorry.
Yes, it is. That council received the reserve alignment to reserve and surplus policy amended December 13th, 2021 report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Council adopted the amended reserve and surplus policy on December 13th, and at the same time directed staff to amend the reserve fund bylaws that would be needed to align to that amendment to the reserve policy. So the first amendment is to the reserve funds establishment bylaw. That is a bylaw that establishes most of the reserve funds for the village. So there's a Schedule A to it, and it has several reserve funds to it. And so the amendment to that would be to add or establish a fund for general fund municipal facility assets renewal. And then at the same time, remove municipal facilities from the general village asset reserve. And then that'll just separate those two funds for the different types of assets and just put a bigger emphasis on your facilities, which is good. And then the second amendment is to the infrastructure asset renewal reserve fund, and that is the change to that was just to clarify that reserve is for linear infrastructure assets, so your underground utilities and your roads, and then also add some language to allow for the reserve to be used for capacity building for your linear assets. And so both of those bylaws are attached for council's consideration, and staff is recommending first, second, and third reading to both tonight.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, so because we had the natural asset thing in the previous meeting, I was wondering, so now that we've separated those out, where would the reserve for like natural or living assets live? Like, would it be in linear, or would it be in the other one, or where would it live if it lived somewhere?
Yeah, so it probably lives in a couple. So the general village asset reserve, it talks about parks and trails, which are natural or green assets, and then the sewer, or the I guess it would be. I'm just trying to think of which other one it would be, like for storm management. So maybe a little bit of linear. We do a lot of storm management where we're separating the storm to go. But yeah, you would have to, if you wanted to reserve funds for those types of assets, you'd probably have to direct staff to look into that a little bit further.
So that would come after we do the policy and implementation. In the implementation phase, I see Clayton.
Yes, I think how we would see that look is would be part of that strategic the strategies as the strategies are developed, and allowing us to determine what that separation between, say, those natural assets and the infrastructure. So we have the policy that we talked about earlier today, and then the strategies that are developed and the plans are developed will help us define where everything fits. But it is actually a really great question how that fits, and it might be something that we'll have to review in the sense of no different than what we've done here is looking at the facilities as a defined asset that needs to have some reserves. Natural assets are probably going to be they will be ones that we'll have to look at that as well. But I think the time to do that is when we begin those strategies that we'll be developing in the coming months here, and then we can define, is it just one, or are there other ones as well, or like Michelle's mentioned, is at the end of the day it is combined with other reserves there. So but good, very good question, something that we'll have to look into for sure.
Thank you.
Someone like to make the motion?
I'll move that council give first, second, and third readings to the Infrastructure Asset Renewal Reserve Fund Establishment Amendment Bylaw number 1163, 2022.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
I'm sorry, Councillor Brown, did you also do 1164? Yeah.
Sorry. That council give first, second, and third reading to the Reserve Fund Establishment Amendment Bylaw 1164, 2022 as well.
Second as well.
You second it, all in favor? Carried. Thank you for picking up on that, Michelle.
Thank you.
There's no business, notice, motions, and announcements. The vacation rental regulation review is now underway with a community survey and public meetings in February. And if you want to get the survey, email planning@cumberland.ca. If you do not have access to a computer, please stop in at the village office from 10 till 12. The village office is open, and from 1 to 3, it's open Monday through Friday. So you can pop in and get a copy of it. And the meeting will be, the online meeting will be held Wednesday, February the 2nd from 10 to 11:30, and Thursday, February the 4th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. So hope to see a lot of people out to have their comments included. Next, we have question period. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask about council's agenda this evening, they can email info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period.
Hello, Mayor Baird. We have a few questions relating to the Royston Road Manufactured Home Park application. The first is, our roads are barely okay to drive on. Do you believe this community can support more people?
Are they referring to roads or just in general?
I think in general.
In general? That's a good question. I'm sure we can. Anybody else wanted to answer that question, how they feel? This is a proposal that was put forward many years ago through the OCP and zoning.
Not everybody at once.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this community can afford to fit in some more people, especially having some more varied types of living arrangements. So I'm looking forward to at least changing up the single family home thing we've got going here. So I'm looking forward to changing some of those things up.
Councillor Brown, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I hear the concern about our the sustainability of our infrastructure and our carrying capacity for all those lovely people that want to move here. But in fact, they do want to move here, and it would be great to diversify our housing stock. So,
Councillor Kettner.
It is a tough question. You know, the world is overpopulated, and I think we're just kind of starting to feel a little bit of that pressure now, whereas other countries have felt that for many decades. So yeah, I think we're kind of privileged here in that we can toy with the idea of stopping people moving to our communities. I don't think that that's something that's really you know, viable, that we can really implement something. There's no drawbridge. And we will just be faced with the fallout of not providing adequate housing to people. So, so I do believe we need these housing options. As Councillor Sullivan said, I would prefer that it wasn't in the form of single family homes. I think what we're doing now is basically building homes for the rich and squeezing out everyone else. So if we want to change that, then we do need to diversify the housing supply. And this development, a trailer park is part of that. It's considered affordable home ownership. So yes, I think that there is room to grow in the right ways here.
Yeah, and I agree with all your comments. I find it very, very sad that kids that have grown up here in this community cannot afford to buy a house at the present time. And people that have rented here for years are being evicted for more because of the cost of the rent. So anything that we could do to help that, to me, is really important, especially for our children. Thank you very much. Is there any more?
Yes, a few more. Is Cumberland prepared for the financial repercussions of an increased population?
The only one that we have at the present would be the policing, which we dealt with earlier today, and we won't know till February the 9th if that will come to happen. We have been putting money in reserves to help us along the way if it is to happen, but I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that it will be free for another 5 years with that cost, the RCMP costs.
I think in Cumberland, we are still catching up from our infrastructure that has been sadly lacking for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. So all the residents who do live here right now, we're playing catch up with all that stuff. And yeah, if we can afford to fix it, we can afford to move forward. And yeah, I think more residents will help with footing some of those bills in the future.
Councillor Brown.
Well, we already, we have developments in the works that are already going to bring a whole bunch more people here. So, and those developments may or may not be provide this kind of housing. So, so yeah, the people are coming. There's no way to stop it.
Yeah, Councillor Kettler.
Well, I think that, you know, we see across the country like infrastructure deficit. And so, you know, municipalities, local governments are kind of set up on a growth cycle, which is not necessarily to say it's a good thing, but we're always needing those incoming people so that they can broaden our tax base, so that we can pay for the infrastructure that we need to replace. And then those people want more services. We have to pay for more services. We have to increase taxes. It's just an ongoing cycle, which is not to say that's great, but that's the reality. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
It's very true what happens.
Reality is nothing stays the same, and we just keep trying to do our very best to roll with it and figure it out.
I've been through the time in Cumberland when we were not moving ahead, and it was a very, very scary situation when 97% of taxes came from residential, and at 99 you do not have the capability of funding your municipality. So there was scary times back then because there was no development and no growth. Okay.
Okay, you ready for another one?
Mhm.
Again, regarding the manufactured home park, how would the manufactured home park affect the existing statutory right of way that the village has registered on the property title?
Courtney, was that included in her presentation?
I can't recall if it's how much that's addressed in the staff report, but there is an existing right-of-way along the Maple Lake Creek for storm and sewer. And it was registered in the 80s, and we believe the intent was for there to be further development beyond at that time. So that right-of-way will need to be revised. And we're looking at revising it as part of this development, but to maintain access by the village to the creek.
Okay, thank you. I can't hear you, Rachel.
Turn on my mic. How's that?
Okay, good.
I think this one again is regarding the manufactured home park. When the OCP states trail connectivity, then where are the trails?
But in the report, it says there are no trails that directly exist between the park, the trailer park, and the other properties. There is no trails there, system there. I think that's what Melina said. Is that correct?
That's correct. The trails in relation to this property in the Parks and Greenways plan are beside it, mainly along Trent River Main.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got one more about the letter regarding Bill C-216. It's a request. Could we have council's letter published in both currently Cumberland and the Comox Valley Record? It would be a great awareness raiser.
I don't have any objections to that.
Maybe the reporter for the record is listening.
Yeah, I talked to Scott Stanfield earlier today and mentioned the bill, and Gord Johns is going to be seeking support for it this week. So yeah, I think it'll be in the paper, but it would be great to put it in currently Cumberland too. Yeah. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, that's it. No more questions.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's the most we've had in an evening. Okay, closed portion, please.
Can we just close it without all the bullets?
Just say the appropriate bullets.
Oh. I'll move
You
the
don't
council.
have to read them out. Just say
Okay, I'll move
appropriate
the
bullets.
council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider personal information, labor relations, the security of property, different acquisitions and such, and negotiations and things.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.